You know, I don't know about you. My truck likes to annoy me. And what I mean by annoying me is, well, it has a light that comes on. Now, some of you are thinking about your check engine light you've been ignoring for the longest time. Well, I've got one truck that does that, and that one's easy to ignore. But this one it's even dumber. It's the tire pressure sensor, because I have 2 gauges that are broken, and I'm too cheap to get them. Now, I mean, what's the big deal, right? But it goes off now 3 and 4 times, even in a simple drive. But you know what? I can click the OK button, and it silences it for a little while. Now, why do I share that? Because we are in this series on emotions, and I'd outuse the smoke detector one, okay? But no, we're in this series about emotions, and sometimes we treat our emotions like a warning light that we ignore or click OK just to, get it to shut up for a little while. And yet God has given us these emotions to attune better to Him, to understand how to find true joy in our life, not the criticalness that is so often in our world. We've looked at depression, we've looked at anxiety, we've looked at anger, and today we're going to look at this idea of envy and jealousy, which so often seeps in even inside the church if we're not careful, because God has created us to have a balance, as we've been saying, the RPMs of life. Relationally, physically, mentally, spiritually, He wants us to find health and wholeness in all of those. You realize today's thoughts create tomorrow's behaviors. Thoughts are powerful. Today's thoughts create tomorrow's behaviors. But behaviors do not change your belief. 30 days might make a habit, but the problem why habits are so hard to keep is because you've not changed your thoughts, your beliefs. Behaviors follow our beliefs. In fact, we quote it all the time in churches, right? That old verse, take captive every thought. That's what God's told us we need to do. Take captive every thought. What we miss sometimes, though, even after quoting it, we're like, well, I try, but it gets away from me, and woe is me. And yet, you realize that verse, Paul liked to use military terms. That was a military picture that they would have gotten that day that we miss. You know what that meant, to take captive? They would have had the picture of a soldier who had just caught an enemy combatant and had taken a spear, placed it at the back of their head, and led them to the captain in charge to put them under captivity. Do you do that with your thoughts? When your thoughts start to get the best of you, are you putting a spear to the back of the evil one who's creating that thought in your mind and leading them straight to the only one who can take care of it, in Jesus Christ in the throne room? Take captive every thought. Envy. It so easily gets us. It's defined as this, as wanting what you don't have or feeling like what you do have is not enough and you deserve more. Even spiritually we do that. God, last month, somebody cut me off in traffic twice, and I didn't tell them what I thought of them. Aren't I a good person? I helped serve at the produce pickup. Is that enough? I even volunteer once a month in the kids, God. That's got to be enough. You owe me. Right? And we do that in our own spirituality. Yet envy all the while. It's like a fire on the outskirts of our heart that starts with this discontentment with what we have and turns quickly to resentment towards others who have what we think we want. You begin to not only want what they have, but you begin to hate them because they got it. Both of my vehicles are at about almost 200,000 miles each. One of these days I'm going to have to replace one of them. And, I don't want a car payment, nor should I really, do one. But, but yet when I see somebody that has a brand new car, if I'm not careful, it's really easy to go, I wish I had that. I wish I could afford that. Now, the problem is I'm seeing it thinking they can afford it, but you all know, we've talked about statistics in America before, and so many of us are up to our eyeballs, not only up to our eyeballs, but drowning in debt that we can't even pay the interest payments on our credit cards, let alone to actually pay debt down, to be out of debt, to live in margin, so we don't feel that way. But yet I'm seeing the new vehicle. that now on a new truck, right, paying a $900 to $1,000. I'm paying more for a truck payment on a new truck than what I pay for my house payment, right? But we see that and we are jealous. And yet Scripture calls us to be the other way as believers, right? In Romans we hear it said, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Now there was a generation in the world that actually, they created a word. It was the German, through the Nazi nation, it was this Schadenfreude. I probably said that completely wrong, so if you're German and no German, I'm sorry. But Schadenfreude, right? And Schadenfreude meant pain, joy. Literally, it meant your pain brings me joy. And that's not the way it is with believers. It's not supposed to be. We are called to rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. So we're going to be looking at Numbers chapter 11. If you want to turn there, it's on page 89 of your pew Bible. It'll be on the Bible in the sky. But, envy is sneaky. It starts small. That glance at somebody's new car, their photos on Facebook of their vacation that really was just a green screen or, some AI background, but you long for it. Suddenly you feel like you don't have enough, and the Israelites were there. Numbers 11. Soon the people began to complain about their hardship, and the Lord heard everything they said. We can stop right there. Church, God hears you. Amen. When you vent and gripe and complain in the hallways of the church where we have cameras and have microphones, we hear. No. Okay. But God hears us. We need to stop taking our gripes to other people, take them only to the one that can actually handle it. But anyways, the Lord heard everything they said. Then the Lord's anger blazed against them, and he sent a fire to rage among them, and he destroyed some of the people in the outskirts of the camp. Can we even just stop there? We're never going to get out of here. But outskirts of the camp, think about it. Sometimes we do that with church. We put our toe in the water, and we wonder why we're not getting the wholeness and the healing, but it's because we're on the outskirts looking in. I've had just enough of Jesus. Instead of truly finding that he wants to bring you wholeness and healing in all these areas of our life, but instead we go, no, God, I'll trust you when it's convenient for me. Then the people screamed to Moses. You could say screamed at Moses for help. And when he prayed to the Lord, the fire stopped. After that, the area was known as Taberah, which means the place of burning, because fire from the Lord had burned among them. The foreign rabble, the CSB says, the riffraff. I kind of like that one better. But the foreign rabble who were traveling with the Israelites began to crave the good things of Egypt. And the people of Israel also began to complain. Now catch that, the foreign rabble. In other words, the Egyptians that were traveling with them, they weren't the ones that were under slavery. They're longing for something, and they're getting the Israelites to long for it as too, and they're forgetful about what it was like for them in Egypt. Instead, they're looking at the food. Oh, for some bacon. Okay, they were Jews, they wouldn't do that. But, oh, for some meat, they exclaimed. We remember the fish we used to eat for free in Egypt. For free. We never had to pay for it. And we had all the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic we wanted, but now our appetites are gone. All we ever see is manna. And Moses heard all the families standing in the doorways of their tents, whining. Think about that for a second. What miracle had God done about doorposts? Why would doorposts be mentioned here? The very final plague, the one that was the killing of the firstborn, this Passover that was started, that they would celebrate year after year after year, where they were called to take a lamb, sacrifice that lamb, and paint its blood over the doorpost so that the angel would pass over them. And instead of remembering God's provision and his miracle, they're standing under that very symbol of God's protection, whining because God hasn't done enough for me. God hasn't done what I expected. Oh, and the Lord became extremely angry. And Moses was also very aggravated. The Israelites had a daily miracle, manna, falling from heaven. But what did? They didn't look at the miracle at hand. They were gazing into the past. So busy longing for the past that they missed the present miracle of God. And what makes this even more crazy is the timing of it all. So some things that we sometimes miss about Exodus and Numbers. Exodus was the account of Israel leading up to Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is where God's presence came down. They heard the voice of the Lord. They saw how real He was. And yet He is leading them now, and yet they've just seen God's presence, His power, His glory, and now they begin to turn critical. There's a warning for the church in there. If we're not careful, we begin to look so far back at the past that we forget what God's doing in the future. Oh, and just like the Israelites, we forget the past. We have a glorified version of it because they sure did forget what was going on in their past. They let their minds wander back and they glorified a lie. Those delicious meals provided by their ruthless masters in distant Egypt. They forgot the intense hardship, the long nights of sorrow, the merciless killing of innocent children, the vicious whipping by heartless rulers. Oh, but Egypt looks really good right now because they forgot it all. It's the easiest thing to look back on a distant scene with pleasure, forgetting that the early days had difficult moments too. Stop envying the past and start pressing for the future that God has for you and for His church. You know, Moses, it says in his writings, behold, God says, behold, I'm doing a new thing. Now that wasn't without going back and being reminded of all the things of the past. Because can I tell you, we are a church that is grateful for those families that in 1932 met in a tent in a tent in the middle of summer, folks. You think it's hot in here right now? And yet hundreds of people came and worshiped, not worried about the fact that whether the air that didn't work this morning, but thanks to some individuals is working now, okay? It just doesn't feel like it. Those families, not to mention those that mortgaged their homes to build the first gathering place over here. Oh, and when a fire tried to knock it out, they still raised more in order to make it what it is today. Those that have paid for and been a part of that legacy fund even now, paying to make sure that our church is a part of this village. We got to stop envying the past. You know, there are 3 types of comparison that cause envy in our lives that we must learn to root out. First is material. The material comparison. I want that. I need that truck. I need what they have. And you realize we see other people's stuff on social media and it makes us want it. Suddenly you don't have enough. Second is relational comparison. You know, we never grew up from middle school. The first time you see one of your friends having a fun weekend with somebody else, just like in middle school, we get jealous. How dare they not invite me? How dare they? And we live in this relational comparison, feeling left out. And we begin to resent others for their friendships, wishing we had what they had. Third is circumstantial comparison. You wish you had somebody else's job. I mean, the pastor's job looks really easy because after all, we only work for 1 day a week and that only a few hours. That was a joke and 5 of you got it. Okay. Maybe you long for a child. Maybe you long for health. And we begin to resent those that have it, wishing we had what they had. Envy is more than a petty emotion. It's a deadly poison. Verse 6 in what we read in Hebrew literally says, our souls are dried up. Envy robs us of our joy, our contentment, even our ability to enjoy what God's given us. As Proverbs 14:30 says, it rots the very bones within us. Envy leads to bitterness, resentment, and a critical spirit, which so often grows up in the church. going to stop there. But it begins to find fault with everything and everyone else while we sit back and point fingers. Max Lucado has a new book that is either out or coming out, and in it he talks about envy and jealousy as a UFO. And it's an acronym. UFO is that it's this untruth that leads to a false narrative that leads to an overreaction. An untruth that leads to a false narrative that leads to an overreaction. I gotta have. Envy is rarely about the stuff or the circumstances. It is always about our hearts. It's about forgetting who God is and what He's done. One of the very first names that we find in Genesis given to Abraham was the name Jehovah Jireh. Jehovah Jireh meant, my God provides. The God who provides. One of His very first names He gave, He said, I will provide for you. He was talking to Abraham. Abraham was trusting and obeying in a deep level, folks. Sometimes we act like we don't know that God provides, and maybe it's because we're not willing to live at a deep level and we are living on the outskirts of the camp instead of surrendering and saying, God, you can have all of me. Everything. Create in me a clean heart. We begin to believe the lie that maybe God is holding out on us. We forget all the things He's done. And like depression, we can feel walled in like Jeremiah in that pit. But God makes a way for us to move from envy, to sniff it out, turn to actually do something about the warning light and move to contentment. We can move from envy to contentment first by recognizing the warning light. See it for what it is when it comes up in your life. When you feel envy, don't ignore it. Don't try to stuff it and suppress it. Recognize it as a signal that there's something deeper going on inside of you. And begin to ask God, Lord, Holy Spirit, reveal to me what's going on in my heart. What is it? Then trace envy to its source. Ask yourself, what am I really longing for? Is it more stuff? Is it better, deeper relationships? Or a different situation? What is God trying to tell me through this emotion? What's He trying to reveal? And then third, right where you are, you remember God's faithfulness. You notice some of these and these emotions kind of are very similar. But we forget what God's done, and we must remember His faithfulness. The Israelites forgot the plagues and how the most violent ones were all ones that He kept off of the land of Goshen. He kept off of the Israelites. They forgot that not only were they freed from slavery, God made it such a way that the Egyptians flooded them with gold and gifts to go out. They left wealthy. They forgot that. Oh, they forgot about how when they made it to the Red Sea and they saw nothing but water in front of them, God put a pillar of cloud behind them that the Egyptians couldn't get through. While He parted the sea, they walked through on dry land, made it to the other side. Oh, and then God closed it up, defeating the Egyptians. They forgot that. They forgot how they just wandered a little bit and they began to gripe because, we're thirsty, God. And God brought water out of a rock. I mean, if I saw somebody tap a rock and it split and it opened up a gushing well, I've seen wells drilled in Africa and they hit water and it shoots up like those old oil, I wanted to say Green Acres, but you know what movie, what old TV show I mean, right? Jed Clampett, and that oil just pops up out of the ground and is gushing forth. That's what happened out of that rock. The impossible made possible because of God, and they forgot it. They forgot his faithfulness. We too forget God's faithfulness, his presence among us. So what miracles and times where God showed up and revealed his presence to you are you forgetting? Take time to remember him. Church, that's why journaling, and I told you before, I really hate to journal personally, but yet journaling is so critical in our walk with Christ because we can go back when we're having difficult moments and go back and read and remember all those times God has been faithful. And then fourth, that should lead us to turn to God in gratitude. Envy thrives in a soul of ingratitude. So start your day every single morning naming 3 things you're thankful for. God, it might one day be just so simple that we say, God, I'm just glad I'm breathing. I'm glad I'm awake. I'm not sure a third one yet, but God, that might be where you are. But start your day counting your blessings. Remember that old song? Count your blessings, see what God has done. Right. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Right. Count your blessings. We sang it, but we never did it. It was here, not here. Remember how God showed up for you and he's providing even now. Quit focusing on what you don't have. Focus on the miracles of God. Fifth, rejoice with others. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Practice celebrating someone else's success. And this is a tough one. When someone gets what you want, celebrate them. I joked in first service, about the vehicles. And Bill, who plays bass up here, his wife got a new vehicle. It's an electric Hummer. Oh, and not only is it an electric Hummer, it does the crab walk this thing is crazy, as my teens would say. It's sick, Dad. It is awesome. And there's a part of me that wants to go, that's okay. But now, that Cobra Mustang that she has, I want to be like, no. I'll rejoice about the Hummer, but no. No. We rejoice with them, celebrate them, send a note of prayer and blessing. It's hard, but it's healing. Romans 12:15, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. And 6, limit comparison. Be aware of how social media and comparison culture fuels envy in our lives. The algorithms are made for just that, folks. Now, y'all should get this, but just to make sure that you do, think about the last time you had a conversation about anything. I think we need a Vitamix. And all of a sudden you open up your social media and now you've got 17 ads for the Vitamix and you see all these videos about a Vitamix. That's the way they're made. We went to a minor league baseball game minor league, the Mahoning Valley Scrappers on Friday night. And in the middle of watching them lose 19-5, made for a long game. But in the middle of that, our kids started talking about the Savannah Bananas. Now, maybe you've never heard of the Savannah Bananas, but they are the Globetrotters of baseball. They now sell out everywhere they go. In fact, they're coming to Cleveland right now. Tickets are $2,000 a seat. Come on, right? They just do crazy things. Like somebody will get up to bat, and all of a sudden, they hit a tone, and the whole field, the whole team starts doing some stupid TikTok dance. That's what they do, right? And so they mention Savannah Bananas. I'm going to mention it 3 more times. Savannah Bananas, Savannah Bananas, Savannah Bananas. Now, you'll see what I saw. I opened up social media, and every 8 out of 10 videos were Savannah Bananas. I'd never seen a video before in my life. It filled my feed because that's what it does. It feeds your envy. So remove that focus. Maybe it's a feed that you need to silence for a while and put your focus back to God and what he's doing in your life. And then 7, ask for contentment. Ask God for contentment. Pray for a heart of contentment. Ask God to help you trust His provision and timing. Ask Him to bring others alongside you in the journey to lean on. That's why discipleship is so important, more so than even just Sundays. We come here to gather, to learn through discipleship, to be the church, to go out, to be missionaries, because where we are, Jesus is, because Jesus is in me. But you can't do that when you're stuck in these issues and these emotions that are batting you down. We must find and share our struggles. Don't sit in the pit alone. Let others walk you to the pinnacle of the cross. Envy wants you stuck, longing for the things of the past and missing the present move of God. But God wants to lift your eyes, to bring you joy and faithfulness, see His provision and His love. So recognize that warning light, trace it to its source, turn to God in gratitude.